Good evening, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you all for being here. Thank you for attending the press conference on behalf of Mayor Johnson. I want to just say that this press conference is one that we've been looking for and hoping for a long time. I know that our congressman did a press conference, but we as the city wants to make sure that we stand unified, showing that we're all working together. I have with me today, along with the mayor, my colleagues, Alderman Michelle Harris of the 8th Ward, Alderman Emma Cruz of the 30th Ward, and Alderman Monique Scott of the 24th Ward, who have joined in with us today at this press conference. I am so excited. I never gave up hope, and I just kept the faith and just put the work in, and at the end of the day, see how we come out. And I truly believe that having that hope and that faith, that you can move some mountains. And in moving the mountain, we are here now to bring our partners up. FEMA to come in, SBA to come in. And let me first thank President Biden, our president, all of our U.S. senators, our congressmen. I can go down the line, Governor J.B. Pritzker, go down the line, our President Tony Preckwinkle, go down the line, our mayor of the city of Chicago, and all the agents who assisted in this effort. This has been a long effort, but it's been a good one because it brought everyone together. We had to come together in order to save lives and to help to provide service for our community. And our road is not over, so I'm going to bring to you our mayor of this great city of Chicago, Mayor Brandon Johnson, to come as he would like to. I started to say president. I want to give you the president spot.
Well, thank you, Alderwoman Mitz. That timing was perfect. The sun started to shine as soon as she said Mayor Brandon Johnson, but the sun is shining on the city of Chicago. So congratulations to the city of Chicago for your commitment and patience. So let's give yourself a nice round of applause. The greatest city in the entire world. Alderwoman Mitz, I appreciate your leadership, and thank you all for joining us this afternoon. We are here today because the federal government has taken a critical action to approve a disaster declaration for the state of Illinois, Cook County, and the city of Chicago following last month's severe storms and flooding. Communities throughout Chicago and Cook County, particularly those on the west side, are still reeling from significant damage to homes and businesses. After the storms in June and July, the city of Chicago immediately jumped into action to help our residents and families recover. We brought the full force of government to the west side of Chicago and all over the city to provide the type of relief that our people deserve. Now, I will say this, when the storms begin to increase, I didn't realize so many folks on the west side had my cell phone number. And the reason why we're in this position is because the people of Chicago came together. And when we talk about the full force of government, that includes the Department of Streets and Sanitation, the Chicago Department of Transportation, the Office of Emergency Management and Communication, the Chicago Police Department, the Chicago Fire Department, the Department of Water Management, and the Department of Family and Support Services. We did whatever we had to do in that moment to make sure that we were here for our residents. And the 311 calls, we received, you all, over 12,000 calls for service due to flooding. From July 4th to the 12th, DSS, DWM, CDOT collected over 5.5 million pounds of storm damaged debris and damaged property. we dispatched city workers, including myself, to tour the hardest hit communities, to assess the damage, and to hear from those directly who were impacted. And as I walked through my neighborhood, my heart ached to see the pain and the damage caused by the storm. And as you all know, the city of Chicago, we're known for a lot of different things. Our basements are just as much a part of the history of Chicago as house music and Uncle Remus. Because it's in the basements where childcare is provided. It's in the basement where families provide support for individuals who need somewhere to lay their head. It's where our memories are stored. Back in the 90s is where we used to, we won't discuss that. We used to get down, Reverend Jake's, in the basement. Well, Reverend Jake's been saved all his life, so I'm not sure about that. But we authorized streets and sanitation workers to assist in the cleanup, prioritizing the elderly and disabled neighbors. We also made sure that my Deputy Mayor of Business and Neighborhood Development, Kenya Merritt, as well as our COO, John Robertson, joined forces with community leaders to distribute supplies to help people clean up. Here's the part that I'm incredibly impressed by, is that for the first time in the history of Chicago, we had city workers not just clearing up alleys, but literally going into the basements of residents to help them clean up and clear out the damage. That has never happened before. That's the soul of Chicago. And as long as I'm mayor of the city of Chicago, we're not going to leave anyone behind. In fact, I'm going to close with this. I was at an event on the south side of Chicago, the Silver Room, and I ran into one of our workers. And he came up to me and he said, "Thank you, Mr. Mayor." And I said, "What are you thanking me for? I haven't been in office long enough to get too many thank yous." He said, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to serve our community. And I'm a part of the streets and sanitation team, and I've been going through alleys and basements to help our people recover." I said, "You're thanking me. I should be thanking you." And you know what he said? He said, "Austin raised me." He said, "It is my privilege to go help support the very families who raised me." That's what this moment has yielded. That the full force of government on full display to make sure that there's real relief for families. And so with that, I'm grateful to every level of government that has participated, as Alderwoman Mintz has already articulated. The federal government, Biden administration, thank you. To the state of Illinois, to Cook County government, to Water Reclamation District. I'm joined by my colleagues at City Council, Alderwoman Cruz, Scott, the 30th and the 24th Ward, and to Michelle Harris on the south side, the 8th Ward. The full force of government is on display, but I want residents and owners of businesses to go to disasterassistance.gov. The number is 800-621-3362. Or, of course, you can use the FEMA app, which we'll get into a little bit later. But thank you all, and with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Chesney. Thank you all very much.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
FEMA is here, and I'm Mike Chesney. I'm the Region 5 Deputy Regional Administrator. I'm so pleased to be standing here alongside of all of our partners, local, state, federal partners, here to share important information about federal recovery resources that are now available to individuals in Cook County who are affected by the severe storms and flooding that followed just over a month ago. First and most importantly, if you are a Cook County resident with uninsured losses from the June 29th through the 2nd of July storms and the floodings that followed, please register for federal assistance. You can do that in 3 ways, and you heard this from the mayor. Online at disasterassistance.gov, using the FEMA mobile app from your smartphone, or calling 800-621-3362. That's again, 800-621-3362. If you use video relay service, caption telephone service, or other types of devices, give FEMA your number for that service. If you reported damage to local officials, you can call in 311 or spoke to FEMA during our damage assessments that we conducted here in July, you are not automatically registered for FEMA assistance. You must use one of the 3 options that I just outlined to begin that process of receiving federal help. Eligible applicants may receive FEMA grant funding to include with temporary lodging expenses and uninsured or underinsured losses during basic home repairs or other disaster-related costs. I want to emphasize, FEMA assistance is not intended to get you back to where you were before the disaster. However, it is meant to help you return your home to a safe, sanitary, and functional residence, and to get you started on your road to recovery. Additional financial assistance will be available through other sources, including low-interest loans from our partners from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Getting help to those who need it most is our priority. Recovery teams will be out in our neighborhoods affected by the disaster very soon, providing one-on-one support to all of the individuals who are affected. Recovery centers will also be opening up for individuals to get individual in-person support. It is my pleasure to announce that Andrew Friend, he's going to be your friend, will be the federal coordinating officer leading the recovery operation here in Cook County. Andrew is a seasoned emergency manager, and he, along with his team of experts, are prepared to ensure that help gets to those who need it the most and as quickly as possible. I also want to recognize our strong commitment to the community and faith-based organizations throughout the affected areas here in Chicago as well as throughout the county. Marcus Coleman, who is here with us today, the director of the Department of Homeland Security Center for Faith-Based and Neighborhood Partnerships, has joined us here today. Marcus, he's over here in the corner with the FEMA shirt. Disaster recovery is a whole community effort, and FEMA is working closely with our partners, including the U.S. Small Business Administration, Illinois Emergency Management Agency, Cook County, the City of Chicago, the private sector, voluntary organizations, and the faith community to meet the needs of disaster-impacted communities across the county. Lastly, I know that so many here have been severely impacted by this disaster. I want to commit to you that we owe it to you that we will be here as long as it takes, ensuring federal recovery resources are accessible to all who need them. Thank you. And I'll be followed by Andrew Friend.
Hey, thank you so much, Mike and Mayor and all our distinguished guests here today. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for the... Okay, awesome. I love it. And the sun just came out again, so we're doing great here. As mentioned, my name is Andrew Friend, and I'm the Federal Coordinating Officer for the disaster operation here in Illinois. Our FEMA team is here on the ground right now, working hard to bring federal resources to Cook County survivors. Our priority now and throughout this operation is to reduce barriers, expand access, and ensure survivors can get the assistance they need as they navigate their road to recovery. I want to encourage residents to continue cleaning up, to take photos of the damage, and to keep the receipts. If you have insurance for the damage to your home, file that insurance claim. FEMA cannot duplicate assistance from others, and insurance is often the best way and the best source of financial help when a disaster occurs. For those in Cook County who are uninsured or underinsured and have disaster losses or expenses, know that FEMA assistance is available. Those options include online at disasterassistance.gov, using the phone number, which is 800-621-3362, or also the FEMA application that can be used on a smartphone. Not only do we have multilingual operators who speak your language available when calling the FEMA hot and helpline, but also we have bilingual staff on the ground here in Cook County to provide the full support needed to these hard-hit areas. Additionally, all written products will be translated to increase accessibility and important access to recovery information for all. As Mike mentioned, we are bringing federal resources into neighborhoods, communities, and villages, and that we're going to have disaster recovery centers in these impacted areas as well. To ensure our programs are accessible to all, we're going to make sure to get where the people are. However, you don't need to physically go to a disaster recovery center to get help. You don't have to. You can start your road to recovery right now. You can do that by visiting disasterassistance.gov. That's disasterassistance.gov, downloading the FEMA mobile app, or calling 3362. We'll be here alongside our federal partners at the Small Business Administration, as well as our state, county, and local governments, and other whole community organizations to do what we can to continue to move that needle forward on getting back to a new normal for so many that were affected by this event. Before I close, I want to note that unfortunately, fraudulent activity typically increases after disasters. Con artists may try to take advantage of disaster survivors and get their personal information to steal their identity. Know that FEMA and SBA will never ask for money. We will never require payment in any form. FEMA personnel will have an official identification badge, so always ask to see the ID. If you're unsure whether someone is who they say they are, you can call the FEMA hotline to verify if they're actually FEMA employees. We know the past month has been difficult, and we're committed to doing what we can to lessen the struggle and support progress towards long-term recovery across the county. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Greg Nimmo, who is the IEMA State Coordinating Officer and Recovery Branch Chief, and he's also my counterpart in this disaster. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So well, I tell you, this is all right. Hey, so I will tell you, going into this, I hope you understand that you've heard the phone number 3 times, you've heard the website 3 times, you've heard you can download an app on your smartphone 3 times. I want to tell you it works. It works successfully. In fact, to date, last 24 hours, there's been over 8,000 registrants already. Oh, wow. So that is a huge number to get us started. That's just a simple start. So keep in mind, with that information, please, those that can do that, do that. We anticipate there's probably going to be some crowds at some of these locations when the building actually open up and you can walk in and get some help there one-on-one. We understand that there's probably going to be a little bit of line in that. That being the case, that's certainly fine. But if you have the skills and ability to do that online, please do so is what we'd ask you to do. Share that with the people that you know, share it with your neighborhood. So, starting today, we as the government are here to help on the road to recovery when it comes to the funding models to help where we can. Government has limited roles. You can do certain things. We have certain powers, certain parameters, certain laws, certain things we have to operate under. I will tell you, today we're bringing the full force of everything we got to the table for you. So that's key. The FEMA and SBA programs you have today, again, you heard it mentioned, are for the road to recovery. They're not to make you whole, but they're to get you back on your feet where you got a safe place to live and some place to sleep and get you going on that. I also wanted to tell you, not to be braggadocious, but the partnerships that I develop here, these folks back here are no longer just other government peers, they're friends. We've become friends through this process. There's people in neighborhoods. I will tell you, the very first street that I went to, the very first time I got out of my government vehicle, I made about 10 steps, and a lady who is probably about 6'3", larger lady, come running down the sidewalk with her hands wide open. I didn't know whether to run, hide, what to do, and she gave me a hug, about broke my ribs. So she said, "I am so glad you're here." That set the tone for me. As a state coordinating officer, I tell my staff all the time, our goal is to help people. Anything you bring to my table, if you're an employee of mine, I want to know how it helps people. That's the question I always ask my staff. So we are excited to be here. We're excited to help. We're excited to have our FEMA partners to the table, make some new friends up here in Northern Illinois, and make this happen. So I also want to encourage you that this road is not easy. Those of you who've been at this for a month and a half already know this is not easy at all. It's not fun. It's just a bad place to be. But I will tell you, a couple things I want to encourage you with. Do not give up. We heard Alderman talk about having the hope and the faith and the mustard seeds and moving them mountains. She's right. We have to have those things. And I will also tell you, you really have a big responsibility here when FEMA starts reaching out really intently to you and your neighborhoods and your communities. Here's what it is, and here's something that we struggle with no matter where we have disaster, is people answering their phone because they don't recognize the number or failing to call back. If you do that several times, there's a chance you might get put on a hold list, and until you reach out, nobody's going to help you, okay? So really make sure you're sharing the word. Hey, if there's somebody out there and you get a weird phone call and you've registered for FEMA, today's the day you better pick that one up and just see who it is first and get the help that you need. The other thing is, and I've seen this in the neighborhoods we go to, somebody will say, hey, this is the 3rd largest city in the United States, a lot of people, so on and so forth. Yeah, but it's made up of a bunch of neighborhoods. That's the key thing, you know. And there's neighborhoods all across America, every part of every state. There's neighborhoods everywhere. These neighborhoods are no different. So here's the key to success: neighbor helping neighbor. You know, there's going to be people that you know right now, if I ask you, is there somebody going to struggle to get registered? Y'all would say, yeah, there's somebody I know. Get with them to get registered. Go over there and set online. FEMA will have some services available. If you identify that person, we can work with you to help get that purchase and registered. So there's a lot of things coming your way. You're going to see some physical facilities open up. It's going to take a little time because there's a lot of people, buildings to lease, locations to establish, things to happen, but that's all in progress and has been since the end of last week. So we are working on this very intently. So with that being said, the last thing I want to assure you, and I say this to every disaster that we go to in the state of Illinois, when it comes to the recovery side of this thing, my goal as a recovery officer for the state of Illinois is to leave no stone unturned. I don't want to leave here and then see on the news story, well, nobody ever helped them. But you can help me by neighbor helping neighbor and making sure that word gets where it's got to go. The other thing is I'm going to encourage you, you heard about the fraud, also understand rumors are coming. Just because the person in the neighborhood that tells the most stories in the neighborhood when y'all get together says something doesn't mean it's gospel truth. All right? So that being the case, if you have a question, there's phone numbers, call, find out. Go to the DRC, find out. Go online, read the information. Don't take it as gospel truth and convince yourself you're not going to apply just because of what you heard. If you do that, you're doing you and your family and everybody else a disservice. So again, neighbor helping neighbor, and let's get some work done and get some help to the people who need it most right now. Thank you. And I would like to introduce Executive Director of Cook County EMRS, Mr. Ted Berger.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Ted Berger, and I serve as the Executive Director for Cook County's Department of Emergency Management and Regional Security. We support Cook County's 134 suburban municipalities before, during, and after a crisis occurs. I am grateful to be here today on behalf of Cook County Board President Tony Preckwinkle as we share this important announcement regarding federal disaster assistance for our residents impacted by the storms and the flooding that occurred on July 2nd. I'd like to extend my sincere thanks to Mayor Johnson, as well as the Cook County Commissioners that are joining us today, Commissioner Aguilar, Commissioner Gordon, and Commissioner Stamps. Your advocacy and support throughout this process is absolutely appreciated. We would like to thank our partners with the Federal Emergency Management Agency and the Illinois Emergency Management Agency as well. This declaration marks a significant milestone as we take another step toward recovery from an overwhelming circumstance encountered by thousands of residents across Cook County. On behalf of President Preckwinkle, I wish to express our sincere appreciation and gratitude to President Biden and Governor Pritzker for their commitment to Cook County's recovery and ultimately all of our resiliency. As emergency managers, we recognize that no two disaster responses are the same. It is critical that we approach each and every response with compassion and empathy, and that we also bring a focused, relentless drive to pursue every available resource to help our residents and our individual communities along this long road to recovery. On the evening of July 2nd, and in the days since this incident occurred, Cook County has responded to support our municipal partners. We've coordinated equipment deployments during the response, including assistance with debris management in several communities. EMRS personnel worked alongside each impacted community for weeks to conduct damage assessments critical to securing this federal aid. Our staff have worked closely with our municipal leaders, documenting the damages experienced and gathering the necessary data to tell the story of what happened and the many lives and homes disrupted. On Tuesday, July 11th, after roughly 10 days of gathering reports and documentation, President Preckwinkle declared a county-wide disaster, advancing this process. This work, like so much of the work we do in emergency management, requires seamless coordination between municipal, county, state, and federal agencies. It is also a strong example of these partnerships in action, in the service of our residents and the communities in which they reside. While this announcement marks a meaningful milestone, the true work of bringing assistance back to our residents continues. Cook County will be here each and every step of the way as we share a commitment and an obligation to help our residents rebuild their homes and their lives. Thank you, and with that, I'd like to invite Cook County Commissioner Frank Aguilar to the microphone.
Thank you, Ted. First of all, I'd like to thank Cook County Board President Tony Purbrinkle and Ted, Executive Director of the Cook County Emergency, Ted Berger, for their first responding to the urgent need on the day of the storm. This is where it all started. I want to thank my colleagues on the board of Cook County to support our residents. I'd like to support elected officials, Governor Pritzker for declaring this a disaster, and our President Biden for his support, and IEMA, Illinois Management, and FEMA. Thank you for being here, and Mayor Johnson, thank you very much. But this is not the end. We have a lot of work to do. Right now, people are just cleaning up, and I'd like to also thank our first responders, the water department, and the public works who are out there firsthand helping our residents clean up and address emergency situations in their homes. I like to stress, we need federal support, federal investment in our water system and the water rec. This is not going to go away, and this is going to get worse. We cannot continue waiting for more and more storms to come and devastate our communities. So I'd like to emphasize again, we need federal support. I like to urge Congress and our President to please, we need your help in Cook County. This is an example of how all levels of government comes together. The western suburbs, the mayors of the western suburbs, and with Mayor Johnson and the city of Chicago, and all levels of government, state, federal, county, and local. We all come together to assist our residents. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague on the board, Commissioner Tara Stamps. No, Monica. Oh, I'm sorry. My colleague, Monica Gordon. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. First and foremost, I want to express my deepest gratitude to our President Joe Biden for approving this major disaster declaration for our beloved state of Illinois. This act signifies the recognition of our plight and the steadfast commitment of the federal government in our time of need. I also like to commend Governor Pritzker for his swift response and decisive leadership throughout this season of unprecedented storms. In moments of crisis, it's leaders like him that make all the difference. And to our Mayor of Chicago, Brandon Johnson, thank you for your intentional, pragmatic, and thoughtful leadership, as well as the aldermen that support Mayor Johnson's mission. To President Preckwinkle, your immediate action driven by a deep-rooted concern for the people of Cook County has not gone unnoticed. Your leadership is a beacon of hope in our community's darkest hours. Moreover, the dedication shown by the Cook County Department of Emergency Management and Regional Security, especially under the capable leadership of Ted Berger, deserves special mention today. Their relentless efforts have been instrumental in mitigating the after effects of this disaster. I'm proud to stand alongside my fellow commissioners, Frank Aguilar and Tara Stamps. Each has been a pillar of strength and commitment, ensuring our community can lean on us when it matters most. As many of you know, the storm that raged between June 29th and July 2nd left historic damage in its wake. Notably, our brothers and sisters in the Southland also bore the brunt of its ferocity, as well as this area that I was born and raised in. Families were affected and businesses were devastated. However, with federal disaster assistance now in place, a glimmer of hope is on the horizon. This assistance will be a lifeline for countless individuals and small businesses, allowing them to rebuild their lives. These funds will not only repair homes and properties, but will prove that the government is ready, willing, and able to be there for its most vulnerable residents in their time of need. Moreover, the provision for hazard mitigation measures ensures that Cook County becomes more resilient and better prepared for future challenges. I would like to acknowledge Mr. Andrew Frand, the Federal Coordinating Officer for the recovery operations. We look forward to working hand in hand with you and ensuring that every aid reaches its rightful recipient. I would also like to recognize IEMA as well in this mission. To everyone affected, you've heard this before. We urge you to tap into the available resources, whether it's registering online at www.disasterassistance.com. I'm sorry, disasterassistance.gov, G-O-V. Calling 1-800-621-3362 or using the FEMA app. Help is just a few clicks or a call away. Cook County has always been a symbol of resilience and unity. Together, we'll rebuild more robustly than before, forging a brighter tomorrow from today's adversities. Thank you. And next, I would like to introduce my colleague, Commissioner Tara Stamps.
Good afternoon. I'd first like to say this is what servant leadership looks like. This is what it means when we do better together. I stand before you today with a heavy heart that has been lightened by the swift response and the support that we have received. The Austin community has a rich history with a vibrant culture and resilient residents, and we've called upon that resiliency in this moment. Yet it is a community that has faced its fair share of challenges over the years, including disinvestment and neglect. The recent flooding has added yet another layer of adversity to the lives of our neighbors, many of whom are elderly and have limited resources to cope with such emergencies. I want to take this moment to extend my deepest gratitude, first and foremost, to our neighbors who we called on in this moment, where we did practice neighbor-to-neighbor support while we waited for our help to come. I want to say a special thank you to our governor, to our mayor, to President Pretwinkle, and certainly to all elected officials, especially President Biden, for his approval of disaster relief funding in the response to this calamity. The president's recognition of the dire situation that our community faces exemplifies the unity and support that can change and emerge during a time of crisis. This funding not only help us to rebuild the damaged homes and the infrastructure, but also provide crucial resources to aid our elderly residents and vulnerable populations who have been severely impacted by this tragedy. I am humbled and moved to the outpouring of support we've witnessed from local organizations, volunteers, and neighboring communities. This is a true testament to the power of solidarity and the shared commitment to help our fellow citizens in their time of need. Let us not forget that we are not alone in this journey to recovery. As we move forward, let us remember that our strength lies in the ability of us to come together as a community. We must ensure that our resources provided are distributed equitably, focusing on those who are most in need. We will work tirelessly to rebuild what has been lost and to create a more resilient Austin community for future generations. In closing, I want to reiterate my gratitude to the President, other government agencies, my fellow electeds, and all those who have extended a helping hand during this trying time. The road to recovery may be long, but I have faith in our community's resilience and determination will see us through. Together, we will rebuild, uplift, and restore the Austin community. And now, I would like to introduce one of our very own neighbors whose this flood devastated her home daycare, Miss Mary Murphy, and immediately following, we will be open for questions and answers. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Mary Murphy, and I am a child care provider in the Austin neighborhood and a member of the SEIU Healthcare. I'm here to talk to you about the impact of the flooding on child care providers like me and the importance of this funding from the federal government. When school is closed during the summer, home child care provider like me provide a safe place for children to go. In my home, I usually use the basement for after-school programming. And when the storms happened this July, I got 4 feet of water in my basement. And I had carpet destroyed, books and bookshelves ruined, games and clothes damaged. I wasn't the only one in the weeks after the storm. We heard from hundreds of other union members who were impacted by this flooding. Many had to close their daycare home, and like me, spending countless days and dollars cleaning and sanitizing our facility. We had to pay out of our own pockets to get our homes back into the shape so that children could return. And as it is, home child care providers are barely paid enough to get by or have a saving to cushion us for this kind of situation. So this was a big challenge. Family depends on me to care for their children and keep them safe. And closing because of disaster like this mean parents don't have a place to take their children while they go to work or school. It also means child care providers take a hit financially, and many even have to close. And we know there is a shortage of providers to meet the needs of family and children in this state. I've been doing child care for 23 years. It took me time to build my program, to get the education and training I need to provide a safe and place for children to learn. These unexpected disasters like flooding impact me and the children I care for in a major way. In my home, I'm still cleaning up the damage, and I have not had the access to my basement since the storm. That means my school-aged children don't have a place to relax, to play games, and to learn together. With school starting next week, I'm still not sure I have the space ready for them. I talked to other child care providers who lost furniture and others who was dealing with broken hot water heaters. Some providers had water up to their knees and other up to the first floor. So many providers on the west side were affected, and this is a huge loss, not only to us, but to the community. We are living in neighborhoods that don't have enough resources, and we are child care providers providing a safe and healthy learning environment for the children in our community. When we close, it impacts everyone. I'm so grateful for President Biden, Governor Pritzker, and Mayor Johnson for making sure that we get the funding we need to come back from this disaster. I personally will benefit from these funds, and I know many other child care providers will too. I will be able to afford to repair the baseboard and the bathroom in my basement that were impacted by flooding, and to get the facility to be clean and ready for the children when they go back to school. Having funds to support child care providers like me with expenses and needed related to this disaster is a huge help. Thank you again to President Biden and Governor Pritzker and Mayor Johnson for your advocacy, making sure that child care providers and small business owners in Chicago affected by these storms are not forgotten. Again, thank you for listening to my story.
Good afternoon, everyone. Mayor Johnson has time for a few questions from the media.
Thank you. For people who wanted to apply for funding, is there a specific dollar amount they could qualify for? And for the entire Cook County region, is there a lump sum that has been allotted? And the second question was if there's any updated figures on how many homes have been impacted. I don't know if we've heard that recently.
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. And, you know, as we set up operations here with Andrew Friend here on the ground, first and foremost, it's about getting everybody to apply for federal assistance. And we are fully resourced to support this disaster financially and with the appropriate staff who are here to support this disaster and help these communities affected by it to come back to recovery. we don't have any issues that I'm concerned with of any kind of financial, shortfalls. So we're here to help, and we want to make sure that the first thing we want to tackle is getting everybody to register, and then we'll go from there. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions directed to the mayor?
And the registration, by the way, October 16th is the deadline, is that right? Where we need people to register. So again, October 16th, we need those registrants to do that as soon as possible.
Hi, Mayor.
Sure.
In the number of homes that were affected, I can speak for the western suburbs, especially Cicero. I would say about over 25,000 homes were devastated this past storm.
Thank you.
Hi, Mayor. Following the record floods in July, some residents had told WBZ they were frustrated because at the time they hadn't gotten calls back from 311. With the 311 system, one of the primary ways the city identifies folks affected by floods. Are you advocating for federal dollars at all to help improve that system, or are there any plans in place to make 311 more responsive as we continue to see
Well, as
record
you saw,
floods?
thank you for that question. As you saw, the full force of government on display. You had an unprecedented response from government, from my office and the city that we have never seen before. The reason why we're in a position to receive the type of support that we're going to get from the federal government is because the 311 system worked. Right? That's in essence, that's how the calculation is determined. Now, look, it's government. Are there systems that have to be strengthened? Of course. But make no mistake about it. For the first time in the history of Chicago, we've had a response from every single level of government where city workers on weekends were going through alleys, going into people's basements, because we're not going to leave people behind. We're not just talking about constituents. These are our neighbors. And that's why the county government is here, state government is here, federal government is here. I live in Austin. Who has more of an incentive for the west side of Chicago to come up out of the damage that we've experienced over the course of decades than someone who's raising a family in Austin? That's right. So look, will we strengthen and continue to build our infrastructure? Absolutely. And it was on full display throughout this entire process. And I'm grateful that my colleagues from the city council are here. It's so good to see the Cook County commissioners. I think they're really here because they just miss me. Thank you for that question. Thank you all. Okay.
Mayor
You got
Johnson
it.
has time for one more question from the media, and then our other representatives will be available.
Okay.
Hi, my name is Trey Arline from Block Club Chicago. I wanted to ask, what is the overall long-term plan to ensure flooding like this can be prevented on the west side in the future?
Yeah, look, that's a very good question. And I think Commissioner Aguilar, we've worked together on the county side to discuss this very dynamic, and I appreciate your question, brother. I do. Look, clearly climate change is real. The earth is speaking loud and clear, because at the time in which this unprecedented levels of rain that fell, you had extreme heat in the western part of the country, well over 100 degrees, wildfires breaking out. We had smoke coming in from Canada. We had floods coming. My wife said, if the locusts come, Brandon, you better repent. The type of infrastructure that we're going to need to transform the city of Chicago is quite apparent. And that's everything from removing, lead pipes that have plagued our communities and has caused, damage, to making sure that, again, that we have mitigation in place to be able to address, what is likely to be some level of reoccurrence. And so, again, from the federal to the state, to county, to local municipalities, we're all committed to making sure that we have resources. Particularly, there's some excitement around the Inflation Reduction Act that can provide opportunity for not just mitigation, but more green technology to ensure long-term sustainability. So I appreciate you all being here today. And again, do not forget, October 16th is the deadline. Use your applications. Also use that number, and to know that we're not going to leave anybody behind in the city of Chicago. Thank you all very much.
So the mayor has a couple of their activities that he has to leave to. Will he open up the floor for media questions to some of our other partners who are on stage? Do we have any media questions?
I'm Brandon with WBBM News Radio. I'm just curious who might be able to speak. I know there's an October 16th deadline to register, but how quickly could someone expect if the relief comes in the form of monetary? When could people expect to see that money in their bank accounts?
Where are you?
He's right there, cup hat.
Oh, with the cup. Oh, there you go. One more time. How soon? How early?
Yeah. I know who's administering the aid, like the funding. Would it be the Small Business Administration for some aspects of it, and then the residential stuff handled by someone else? And then October 16th is the deadline. How soon could people expect to start seeing some of this funding come into their bank accounts?
Sure. Well, Andrew Friend, Federal Coordinating Officer with FEMA, and that can be a very quick process. What's important is everybody's story is different on their road to recovery, so the types of access they have to funding might be different looking on what they experienced and what was damaged. That being said, the quickest way to get that funding, if you're eligible, is to do that application with FEMA. And again, that's disasterassistance.gov, or the phone number, 1-800-621-3364. And start that road to recovery. I could say that once people are registered and deemed eligible, on part of that process is having the housing inspectors come out to look at their properties. So that's why it's so important that if you get that phone call from a strange number, to pick that up, because that will certainly delay your funding. If you don't pick that up and have that housing inspector come and inspect your property, again, that could greatly slow down that process. So pick up that number, but the first step on here is to get registered. And again, the 3 ways to do that is disasterassistance.gov, downloading the FEMA mobile application, or the number, which is 1-800-621-3362. 1-800-621-3362.
Could I follow up to that, please? So do you have just like a roundabout, like weeks, months? I know sometimes when people are expecting relief, like the small venues, it took 16, 18 months for them to get some of the funding that was allocated to them. Is this going to be weeks or months?
So on the individual assistance side, once the housing inspector comes and inspects the house and they are deemed eligible, it can be days for that money to hit that account. But again, everyone's situation's a bit different, so it's navigating that process, and the way to navigate that process is getting in touch with FEMA.
Good afternoon. I think I might have a question for you, Andrew, as well. Don't go far. Whoever wants to answer this question, actually, because so many of the folks that we're talking about may not have internet access or may not be internet savvy. I see aldermen shaking their heads, alderpersons shaking their heads. Sorry, I don't want to disrespect. What is your plan in terms of, you said you were going to open some of these centers. What is your plan to try and help the folks, perhaps older residents and folks who don't have access to do these applications?
Sure. So the quickest way for those that don't have access to the internet or say a smartphone to download the application would be calling the number. So again, that's 1-800-621-3362. But I'm happy to also report we're going to have what's called disaster survivor assistance teams who are literally going to be hitting the ground tomorrow morning, going through these impacted communities, and they're going to be there to link up with the survivor, and they can actually help them. They're on their doorstep to do their application. Eventually, the disaster recovery centers will open up, and folks can come in there in person and seek support as well. But you don't have to wait. You can call that number right now. The timeline for opening those centers, we're working with our state and local partners to identify the best locations moving forward. That is one of our top priorities, to get these centers open, so we're working to make that happen as quickly as possible. As quickly as possible. It's our number one priority.
Yeah, I just wanted to answer on behalf of all of the elected officials on the west side what we're doing right now, and I'm encouraging everyone to do, and I'm sure they are doing it, is we putting the information out in the community, created a flyer with the information, taking it and passing it out to anyone and everyone. As we had the flood and had meetings. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. we're passing out flyers to the community. That 1-800 number, that FEMA website number, to make sure that people know. And some people that are not watching the news, that don't have the internet, we want to make sure they get it. And every time we give it to someone, we are telling them to pass it on and keep passing the word out. And we are going to connect with all the residents. In fact, they're coming to the office to pick that information up. They will be contacting us once they know that, how do I get assistance? They don't have to hear it, they just want to know how can they get, and we'll pass that information on. So we're asking the media to do the same thing, keep putting the number out, and also the website number, or having to download the FEMA app. Don't forget, deadline, which is crucial for all of us, October the 16th. We don't want anyone left behind. And then when you get that phone call, it will probably be an out-of-state number, so you have an opportunity to answer it. I'm told approximately about 3 times, if you don't catch your call, you might drop off the call. So we don't want anyone to miss out. That's important for us to get that information out as well. There are a couple of things for non-for-profit organization as well as for-profit business and residents. So I would urge everyone to follow the guidelines of what FEMA is instructing them to do. If they tell you that you need to call SBA, then you call them. And whatever steps, don't just say, I don't need, because you don't know what would happen. If you don't complete your steps, you won't get referred back to FEMA to get that assistance. So I just want to make sure that we are communicating all the information, and we will. Thank you.
I'm Joe Barrett with the Wall Street Journal. Want to ask Commissioner Aguilar, can you talk a little bit about whether you think this was sort of a failure of our flood control system, and what we kind of need to do to be more resilient going forward?
All levels of government has to be involved in this, especially our federal government. We need to invest more money on infrastructure, on drainage. I mean, they built the water reclamation facility back in 1889, and these over 100 years, all we did was just mandate it. They need uplift. They need billions of dollars to upgrade the system, billions of dollars to upgrade our drainage system. We need help. It's a federal issue. This is not one local community's issue. It's a regional. We need much more investment from our federal government.
I just wanted to follow up because we heard the warning that there are always fraudsters out there. So this call that you might be getting from a number you don't recognize, that's usually a tip that you don't pick up, right? So can you just give us a little bit more information if you do get a call from a number you don't recognize? What are they going to be asking for, and what maybe not to give out? Like, how are you going to know this is actually a representative of FEMA or AMAN?
Sure. Well, first, you need to register. So if you get the call and you haven't registered, there's a problem there, right? But once you register and you get that out-of-state call, they're going to be making contact, identifying who they are. They're going to be verifying some information with your application number, and then scheduling that visit. If you are unsure or uncomfortable, you can ask them for their name. You can hang up and say, I need you to call me back. I need to verify who you are. You can hang up the phone. You can call the FEMA number and say, hey, I'm so-and-so. I think I got called by a housing inspector, but I want to double check that. And you can verify with that number if they actually are who they say they are. And that's the same for a housing inspector or the disaster survivor assistance teams that go around and literally knock on every door to help people register that might not be able to otherwise. And also, too, to see if there's any urgent needs out in the community. FEMA and the SBA will never ask for payment. If anyone's asking you for payment or for money, that is not us. That is 100% fraud. What they will be doing is confirming information that's on your application, including your application number, that would not be possible for a fraudster to get, okay? And again, if you're unsure, you feel uncomfortable, say, hey, I need your information to call you back. You can call the FEMA hotline number, verify with them before you press forward. But unfortunately, during times of disasters, there are those folks that try to take advantage of the good people and the survivors who already went through so much. So it's important to us that everybody's safe.